But today, IT is a very important part of the core business of a lot of companies, and becomes more and more important for corporations around the globe. And I'm very happy to have a very exciting panel here and a very interesting panelists for that. Ladies first, Hanna Hennig, who was responsible for IT at E.ON and will be responsible for IT at OSRAM, and Marco Stipek, who is the co-founder of IT Agenten. Welcome on stage.
I guess we have to share. Well, thanks a lot, Daniel, for having us here.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you too.
And of course, also in this panel, feel free to ask any questions you have and want to ask. This, yeah, well, IT. So, yeah, exactly. IT changed a lot in the last couple of years, the last decade. It was an infrastructure provider in the past, mostly. Today, it's a core part of new product innovations, of new services, and so on. How difficult is it to transform the IT department into something that is really innovative and developing products in the end and supporting the business units in creating new services and products?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to also talk about this, because it's really actually a challenging situation for each IT responsible, and obviously the consultants as well, which are, which we always try to get also help from. I would say, from a mindset perspective, yes, there are also a resistance which you can feel within the round of the IT colleagues. On the other hand, most of them are very willing, and they actually are very, excited about the new digital era which we are now entering. However, they are very often pushed into the corner of the, and you guys call it also, here, traditional IT, providing only office IT, workplace equipment, etc., and pushed into the corner in that sense that basically they are very often driven by the responsibilities they have to carry for the company, for the enterprise, namely to provide stability of the system landscape, secure system landscape, and also deliver the right services for the right cost. So via cost-cutting initiatives throughout last years, very often the traditional IT has been pushed into the corner, which also gave them a reputation of being old-fashioned, not willing to support, not basically delivering the right innovation. And I think this is a wrong picture, because everybody needs to understand actually not the IT people don't really, or the traditional IT doesn't very often select that choice for themselves. They are very much driven in that corner. And as also my former board member said, each company deserves the IT it has because of the fact, how it's treated. But on the other hand, you always need the counterpart who is allowing being treated as such. So I think we are actually now getting out of the corner, but it's, and I just discussed it with one of my future colleagues from OSRAM, IT colleagues are very much driven by the challenge of making a circle out of a square, which means on the one hand you are required to reduce your cost by XYZ% per year, and at the same time you are required to set up the digital transformation roadmap. So where do you get the investment from, right? So that's my message. So I think we are on a good way, but it's still a challenge.
Maybe to go on one step further, what was the role of traditional IT? It was not only providing office IT, it was also a policy enforcing institution within the company, with much more reach than the upper management had before the IT, because they decided how to implement the processes based on the IT, and so it was more like in slavery for the workforce, and not seen as a tool, often also seen as a enforcement institution. So, and now when what changed radically is that is a part of the supply chain management. So you have you develop products based on IT, or nearly every product has an IT part in. So now it's not a tool anymore; it's a part of the product. So this is the main change, and maybe. Or what we discover is that it deserves more freedom to develop than it was in the traditional IT.
As you already mentioned, IT is supposed to cut costs like every year, and is outsourcing a lot of stuff to different countries. I think it was Portugal was very important. For India is now the new thing to do, and we always see, especially in big corporations, we see a lot of outsourcing going on, and then there's a lot of insourcing. It's like a lot of centralization, and then there comes a lot of decentralization, and it's always like a game going on for many years now. And it sometimes feels like the responsible people maybe don't see that it didn't work out the last time, and they repeat to outsource a lot of people. So what's your opinion on that?
Maybe I will have a strange opinion in your view. I have been with outsourcing basically in many years now. Really, E.ON is very almost full-fledged outsourced. My vision of the IT of the future is actually that of a service broker. I really firmly believe that actually IT needs to be democratized, and IT is really to build the right ecosystems of partners to deliver the services, being in the commodity area, which is managed services like, for example, data center infrastructure, workplace environments, provisioning, and also innovation. Because sometimes you simply do not even get that many people you need for specific skills, like even for the new 4 digital technologies like big data, IoT, etc. You actually also need to have some partners who can help you with that. And the compositioning and the orchestrating of the partner is actually the core of IT. Still, it depends always on the industry you're working in and what is the core product of the business. So if, for example, you believe for example, need high capacity to simulate, maybe on the basis of a high amount of data, you need to simulate basically new products you're delivering. Or, for example, in the trading business, in the utility area coming now from that, basically, there are people basically who just do every single day, they simulate the best trading product on the market. For that sense, you sometimes even can choose to keep your hardware infrastructure in-house and even develop a hardware computer. For example, also Volkswagen does it, with the quantum computing right now, because they feel that's where they gain their own competitive advantage. Yeah. Whereas other companies would then say a data center, that's commodity for me. I would not look at it. Where if I look at all the consumer business, all the retailers, basically, they're of course moving into the online business. They are pretty much looking into developing the apps. So even though having maybe additional partners providing, resources for building many apps, basically, they will still keep a core team of people who are the designers who understand UX versus the UI, etc. pp. And by the way, there is a minimum number of people you definitely need in your company to steer also the ecosystem. So you need the architects, you definitely need the business analysts, somebody who understands the business needs and translates it also into technology, and also vice versa, because sometimes these animals don't really talk to each other, right? We know that. So it's really about this orchestration, and you definitely also need, service integration people, service management people, security people, etc. But definitely also the user experience design. And this is what I see also on the horizon. These kind of people that have not been needed in the past, people were actually happy with the UI basically, but now it's really different, and you need to create these user journeys basically with the people who understand what the customer needs. And these are the new profiles of IT in the future, at least from my perspective. But maybe you have something to add to that.
Yeah, as I said before, because it's going to be part of the product, the people are developing products within the company needs to know about IT. That is a big problem, actually. which we face often, that we have customers where the counterpart from us is not really does not really know about how to develop IT stuff, and that's basically the thing why they come to us. But on the other side, you have to have a basic understanding what this kind of work is to create a successful product, and what are the possibilities and what are the costs about the possibilities and stuff like that. And the IT landscape is changing very, very fast. We have many talks about innovations the last 2 days. And for example, the new cloud native strategy means like this container stuff, which all clouds provide now, enables completely new business models or completely new possibilities to scale, even if you don't know how to scale. And that is a thing what is changing, that you have infrastructure managed by Google or Amazon or Microsoft. They can provide the scaling and the availability you can't for a reasonable amount of effort in your own company. So, and that is the thing what will be the most influencing thing, I think, in the next 5 years in software development and IT development within products.
A couple of months ago, I saw one of the Slack co-founders on stage. And he talked about the story, how they developed Slack and why he thinks it's so successful. And he explained that most IT products are developed for IT departments. So, like, you have to follow certain policies, you have to have a lot of data security, you have to be cheap, and many other criterias. But the one criteria that is often not so important to them is how what the end user really wants and what the end user really needs, and how you can provide that to make it easy to use and intuitive to use. How difficult is it to explain a cost-driven team, a cost-driven department, to explain them to that the best product is not always the cheapest, but might also be sometimes maybe even the most expensive one?
I would actually object that it really needs to be the most expensive one, which has a good user experience. My experience actually is when it comes to user products, and maybe also office products, you can basically, what is very helpful is, and where all IT colleagues basically always buy into, if you do something which you actually also do in the business, you do basically something called customer segmentation. That means also in the user landscape, you are looking at the personas. What type of personas are using a product in a certain way, which then also helps to develop the product in the right way. Plus, obviously, what we now have learned about user experience, user journeys, etc. If you do simply apply these methods, people very much utilize the knowledge they already have and the technology they already have, in the right means to actually develop very simple products. Very often the complexity comes because of the fact that we try to build something within the existing systems, which on a first sight looks like less expensive, but it's not very much expensive because you then spend a lot of time to enhancing that product, which has been somehow squeezed into, for example, an ERP system. Instead of building a very easy front end and combine it with an API in the back end, you then create basically a dinosaur, which is then consuming a lot of investments in terms of, they call it an enhancement. It's not visible in the investment budget, but then you basically, every year you spend enhancement money on it. And it's much more expensive than just building this 3-tier architecture I just explained. So that's, for me, is the future, which, by the way, has been there always. It's just that I think it's the leadership topic, And I believe very strongly in architecture. So I think what we see right now, with the new technology, with the new approaches, with design thinking, with user experience, with user journeys, with agile software development, it has been there all the time, but it's now pushed more and more. And also microservices, for example, which is now replacing SOA basically from the past. This, I think, is the future. It still needs to be managed because microservices, they sound like a great thing, but if you have thousands and millions of them, you also then need to be taking care of stability, which basically are not that easy to handle. And I think Amazon would never admit that because they are now full-fledged microservices company, but they also have their difficulties because they can hardly manage the complexity now with all their presumably millions of new features they are creating every day, which they are proud of, but who's going to manage that?
Yeah, maybe one example, and this is basically my introduction thesis I had. If you see like the IT in the 80s or 90s tried to create the big monolith like SAP for everything, so they thought you can put the whole business process one-time investment because you think that the most things don't change in a company, what actually isn't true. Every day a company is changing and needs to change to adapt the market, to adapt the products, to adapt to the competitors. And the biggest problem was that this view was not user-centric, it was management-centric. So IT was done like, I have to do it because my boss wants me to do that. And he has to be satisfied at the end, not the customer. And this, we experience that our customers want to change it, but they have their difficulties because there are many stakeholders in a company, as you know, in big companies especially, and many times they are talking about 20 people about a project, and then that's the originator from the project is sometimes under the pressure of satisfying all the stakeholders, not the user or the customer at the end.
So the last years we heard about a lot of IT methods like being more agile, Scrum, and so on. If you connect that to all the other departments in a company, what could they learn from all those methods you have in IT when it comes to development or project planning and so on?
Yeah, I guess, the typical methods which I guess you will refer to is what we already mentioned is, the agile method, the design thinking, etc. When you look at these methods like agile, for example, you will discover that there are actually very good components in there which lead through the whole cycle. For example, prioritization of product features, within the agile Scrum approach. In there are different methods basically which the Scrum Master, respectively the team, is using to prioritize the right feature for the next backlog, from the next backlog to be taken and basically developed. Now, this method, for example, can be very much used in the prioritization of the products which a product development department, for example, wants to launch. Yeah, that means that they can apply these methods to identify what's the right customer value, which will then rank one product against the other. That's one area. The other, of course, is, for example, within design thinking, obviously the approach of creating new products. And what I think the beauty of both of all these method is that it requires, and I think we heard it from Payback today. I was a little bit smiling because for me that was inherent in all these technologies, all of these methods. You always need to have several partners on the table, at the table basically. Otherwise, it will not work at all. That means the business and the techie and the product developer and the user ultimately. If you look at the method Lean Startup, basically, it's always an iteration with the actual consumer of the product. They always have to work together. Otherwise, you will never be able to apply fast development of a product. It will always take you as lengthy as it used to take in the last years. Yeah. It has its limits in certain product areas where we, for example, think about infrastructure products, just putting, setting a whole enterprise live on Office 365. you cannot simply run in Agile. There are some prerequisites which you need to basically deploy first, and that people need to also acknowledge. But you still can start experimenting around how do you utilize the feature of an Office 365 product for the right collaboration approach, because many people don't even utilize these products very well. And for that, you can once again use, Agile approaches to, setting up maybe digital workplace labs and then try out what feature can be applied how.
Actually, and that was also the case in the 80s or 90s when SAP, for example, started. The companies learned much of IT because IT, I tell our customers often is they don't want often to decide how to what to do concretely in a feature for a software, for example. They do it so or so, and I tell them, that's not a choice I have, because I have to put really effort into software development when I do it so or so. So I have to use a random generator to decide if I do it that way or that way. And so somehow IT was enforcing decisions and was to be more clear and more precise what you want to reach. You have often in big organizational structures the case that people don't want to decide or to delegate it, make it so or so, and that's not possible for IT. It's a cost factor. So, and it actually is also if they do it in a normal interaction with the colleagues, but it is not so obvious. And that is a thing which is now taking place, that if you have 20 stakeholders in a company, the IT is somehow pressuring the whole group to be more efficient and to be more clear about goals and what they want to reach.
By the way, do we already have questions in the audience? No? Okay. We talked a lot about digital natives in the last years and about people that grow up with certain technologies and don't remember a world without them. And in a lot of companies, we still have a lot of support for basic IT services like Excel or Word things. I think most of us can imagine that you might need some IT support for using that. But there is still a need for support in a lot of basic topics, which also costs a lot of money in the end. What kind of requirements should a company today have on IT when it comes to IT knowledge to avoid a cost structure for such basic support topics?
Yeah, so the minimum profile of an user, I guess, wish list, but never happens, because the average of an company and of an enterprise which is longer on the market, basically the average age is not necessarily 25. Yeah, the average age is something around, if you're lucky, 35, but usually 40. Yeah, but I mean, ideally, and I think this really costs a lot of money as well, and as you said it, is that you should, as a user, understand, how you can actually, install an image on your laptop. Basically, get your laptop, take it off your wrapping, take it off the package, shut it on, and basically have the image being loaded on the computer, basically, as well as your smartphone needs to be easy to be installed, by yourself. So everything which has to do with office equipment, actually, you should be knowledgeable about. That would be the idea. That means also you don't need to have any help desk in the world, which is actually helping you with setting up your office environment. That would be ideal. Yeah, but it's of course not always possible because of the legacy also, which is, connected with your clients, with your desktops we are basically getting. And that's, I think, the disadvantage here. On the other hand, it's also something where we are leading also our people into using, for example, chats, or even accepting chatbots instead of a help desk agent, where you can actually, also release people, or even don't need any outsourcing colleagues for example, for the help desk, because it should be all automated. Even the ticket routing basically could be all done automatically. And that's basically what I'm favoring, because I would rather like to spend the capacity of people in the right technology and building new products rather than to support, I would call, commodity, because in your daily lives, you guys, each of us is using apps. Each of us is able to set up his own computer. Each of us is able to set up his own iPad. Each of us knows Office, hopefully. And as we know, even Office functionality, it's so rich, we usually maybe use 20% of that. And this is exactly where we need to spend time to make people understand how to leverage and exploit the technology which you have on your table to the most advantage for increasing productivity.
I got a step further, I think, and I've been discussing this topic often with people from universities, that I think that especially the product people in the companies have to learn somehow, like, how is IT working, the processes, how is software development done, and why is it done in that way we do it. And the other thing is to have a basic understanding about technology. What is a computer? How does it work? So, and that is something which we are really missing, because it's not like if you ask a repairman to repair your washing machine, you don't need to know about your washing machine and how it works exactly. But if you develop products which have a digital part in it, you have to know somehow how it works, not in the detail, and you don't need to do it yourself, but you have to know what the people are doing on the other end. Then it gets cost effective, more successful, because you know what is possible. We have all these buzzwords, like now the voice user interface, for example, or the KI machine learning things. And I often speak with people in companies, and they have a completely wrong imagination how these machine learning stuff is working. You ask the machine, and it's like they talk like it's a human being, but it isn't, and it does need some input and some methodology to get the right answers, if you can get it from the machine. And then you don't need to have to implement it yourself, but you have to know the basic things. What is a neural network? What is statistics in there, and stuff like that.
Sorry, there's one. I just wanted to ask, because we have time for one question. So, one from you.
One little question. So it's really interesting that you say that people in the companies need more IT knowledge. I see it also this way. The question is, where or when should the people start learning? In school, in university, or should the companies pay for the training? Should the people pay for themselves? We have, so we are doing trainings in university, and they cut off the budget because they say there's no one who wants to learn anything but Excel. So I see that there is a need, but a lot of people say, yeah, I don't care because I get my job that way as well. So what's your opinion?
I mean, I'm a firm believer of lifelong learning. So regardless when, you need to learn, otherwise you stop. I believe that, we should be starting as early. And by the way, we start as early as you have kids. Because digital natives having kids, basically, these kids, their kids will already have the knowledge of what their parents have. So it will start immediately. I'm also a firm believer of and providing time to people for training. So my aspiration is, and again, we come back to stakeholders, how far is that enforceable in a company? But basically, at least within Aeon, we had, I think, 10 days training per year, obligatory for each. And again, you don't like maybe the word obligatory, but it really requires people to really spend time in training. Yeah. And it was really, and I must agree with you, and it was very astonishing and also, unfortunately, frightening that not many people have actually used up that budget. Yeah. Which again shows me, that I think it's not on the people necessarily. I would not like to blame them, but it's also for the companies to give people priority for that. They need to really be given the time and also some push to continue this learning. And the earlier it start, I can only say it, the better, because as we saw, speech will come immediately. now, not yesterday, now, tomorrow, and it will dictate our life for sure.
Yeah, and the basic know-how, yeah, for sure, you have to learn in school and in university, and it should also integrate into other jobs. Like if you learn marketing, you should also have a course in the university about marketing and IT, and where are the interfaces between, and how to deal with these interfaces. And this is basically the one thing. The others, as developers, we know that you have to learn every 2 years 50% from the know-how, because it changed during that time. So our employees are lifelong learner, and that is maybe also a thing which could be translated into companies on in other departments, that you need to stay up to the top to stay competitive.
So we have one more question.
Yes, thank you. I have an organization question, and I would just like to get your idea, your feedback on it. So I'm running a company which is about cryptocurrencies. One of our products will be an app. And the decision that we want to make, or we're looking to make, is to combine the development app and the internal IT. So the app development and the internal IT into one tech department. So not really differentiate between internal product, external product. Sounds good. Is that what you're saying? I just wanted to get your feedback, your thoughts.
I have showed thumbs up because I believe there is a strong synergy potential if you do that. And why? On the one hand, of course, it's about number of resources you would then need. Yeah. B, the people who are actually delivering that app, they actually are hopefully eating their own product, eat their own dog food. So they will very much care about, who the user is, who the consumer is, basically how it works, etc. So it's always good to see the end result, not only basically supporting. Yeah. The only thing I believe you need to be careful about is, of course, the skills you have in that team, and also think about something which Gartner has promoted very lastly in the last years, which people are debating a lot, which they call bimodal IT. So there might be, products which basically, or there might be IT components which really do not require that speed, and that flexibility and that number of change, basically, where app development is very much about change, new features, etc. So this is basically when you need to be looking at, are there maybe type of people which are rather in one mode than the other? Not, sometimes subconsciously. Yeah. If there are people which are flexible for both modes, I would, definitely vote for actually developing them by being in both modes. Yeah, one side and the other, so that basically they can really expand and becoming this T, as we call it, instead of being just one typical IT category working. Yeah, so I would say I would really definitely support you in that thinking, and I think it will give a boost to the internal people, as long as the product people also appreciate the other colleagues and vice versa, because I think this is also a challenge to a certain degree. Not sure about how you feel it in your company, but I felt it, throughout the last years, it was always a difficulty. And again, it also depends on the industry. So I think if you are purely an app company, etc., then for sure there's no need even to have these two disparate departments. For example, if you look at telco companies, their IT was always part of the business. There was no difference. Yeah. Whereas asset-based companies, for example, also utilities or, healthcare in the earliest days, or chemical companies, they always had basically a totally difference between the front product development ITs and basically the internal IT. So for me, it's no-brainer.
Yeah, actually. We are talking everywhere about cross-functional teams, and that is one thing. And actually, you have also this one point that I call it the old IT departments often make decisions because they have to do it. Like do we have, do we need the in-house software, for example? Do we have develop our own software, or do we use service providers, cloud services and stuff like that? Especially in Germany, we have many companies not going to the cloud, and which is really a disadvantage, competitive disadvantage, if you see how it is done in the US, for example. And that is the role of the IT department is completely changing. And if you have an old school IT department, they are buying the products and bringing it into the house. And that is not the problem. That is, you do it one time, you are constantly, you need to constantly serve updates and to have these customer support, the internal customer support thing and employee support thing and stuff like that. And that is maybe the right time to go that way. Actually, in our company, for example, our developers are all responsible to maintain their desktop themselves. Because we said you need to know at least how how network administration and stuff like that is done on a basic level, even if you're a software developer.
One last very short question, with maybe a very short answer from both of you. What do you think is the most important trend for corporate IT in the next years?
Trend. You expect a short answer on that question. That's a contradiction in itself, I would say. I think I would need, yeah.
Basically, the thing you already talked about, microservices and the changing mindset of the architecture, that you think more in services than big monoliths which should serve everything, in German eierlegende Wollmilchsau, and it's changing to small services which fulfill the needs of the real needs, not the thing we could imagine sometime. And therefore, and that is basically also the most important trend for IT, the IT department have to serve as a tool surfing department for the development of products, and to give a platform like Kubernetes or cloud native or virtual machines is old today. So to give the possibility to the other departments to develop itself and the product in a digital way.
So I would like to build on that, and would like to add rather and maybe a business component to that, because you basically answered very much in the technology space. I believe that IT needs to really focus on business value IT. And only by that, IT will not be seen as the cost factor, because so far IT, pretty much, in particular traditional IT, unless it has a label which is called innovation or digital, then they have money to spend. Come on, come on. We know the differences. Because we usually, traditional IT saves the money for the digital guys, just to be very clear. Via sourcing, also very clear. So here it's really about ensuring that actually the question is not asked, how much money can I save today or tomorrow within IT. It's really about, how much additional euro can I generate with an IT euro spend. Yeah, that's the most important question, basically, which I am asking my people, and they need to be asking the business as well, to ensure that whatever we create jointly, for sure jointly, and we also deliver the platforms for that, or the tools, etc., because we want people to absorb it, to understand it, and not only IT people, do it in isolation, but really to think about what do we create with that investment today and tomorrow, and not to waste money, basically. And then we have the right discussion. And then I'm also seeing, that we are able to deliver the right products with the right tools and with the right technology. We can also save money, by the way. Yeah, it's not only about I need the latest tools, basically, and it will give me more outcome. It's really also you can apply the right technology and you can also save money with that.
Perfect. Thank you.